Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew and today we are doing the third part to this whole Godzilla HIYA Toys collectible comparisons. And today we've got, of course, it back for round 3. And we are going to be pitting it up against the S.H. MonsterArts Godzilla 2021. We're going to be doing another 7-rounder of this. Sculpt Paint, articulation, size, accessories, price, availability, and packaging. Being sure that everything is fair and even, we're going to be doing this on a point-by-below basis as per usual. So let's go ahead and start off. Round 1 is Sculpt Paint, and first let's take a look at the heads and mouths of both figures. But really looking at the heads on both figures, this should already tell you the quality difference between the two toys. The HIYA Toys has obviously the better head paint, and the sculpting on both figures, at least the head part, is rather similar. But I gotta say, I prefer the MonsterArts, the mouth paint on the MonsterArts more specifically, just because of how vibrant of a blue it is compared to the HIYA. I guess it's just because I'm a sucker for vibrancy, and blue is my favorite color, so, you know, the mouth on this blue is something I prefer from my own standpoint, but this, in my opinion, just looks a lot better executed. Next, let's take a look at the torsos of both figures. I've mentioned it like 3 times before, and I'll say it again. The HIYA toy suffers from the problem that even though that the dry brushing here is in the blue paint application, it's done really well. It's just, it looks like a vest because of the way that the arms are painted. Yeah, there's some mild blue paint here, which you can't really see on camera, but it seems to be more of like a paint issue, transfer issue, rather than something that was intentional. While the MonsterArts features some mild dry brushing, like across the torso area to where it meets the crotch, it actually looks somewhat decent. Although I will say, as far as like the overall point of the application, I will say this is slightly better. And also about the claws are rather even. The MonsterArts has more spread out claws, almost like he's grabbing on something, while this one has more neutral style claws. But the HIYA actually features a lot more dry brushing on theirs, while the MonsterArts just features the claw paint, and that's about it. Up-tracking back towards the neck area, I said this in my NECA versus HIYA review, is that something that both figures do pretty well is the necks. But again, the HIYA, in my opinion, got the paint wrong, because the gills are technically supposed to be glowing, not his neck, because they're literally gateways to his throat, while the MonsterArts doesn't really feature any paint at all except for the mild dry brushing right on his neck. But at least with the HIYA, the gills are much more pronounced than the MonsterArts. It's lost in the segmenting versus the HIYA, where it uses the gills to the segmenting's advantage, and when we actually go to the articulation, it'll look rather natural and flawless. Although I will say the application on the neck is a bit heavy-handed. It looks like nail polish. Next, let's look at the thighs of both figures, or I guess the legs, not the feet themselves. It's a slobber knocker for the HIYA, in my opinion, because while the MonsterArts does feature amazing sculpted detail, it's all lost thanks to the fact that there's no dry brushing. Well, I wouldn't really say lost, because shadows do make the detail very apparent, and when you rub your finger on there, it actually getting that little piece of fur off, it looks really good. The HIYA features really well sculpted details, although I will say the MonsterArts is a bit more defined, but couples that with paint and dry brushing. This is notes Bandai needs to take, because dry brushing makes a whole lot of a difference. And now we're going to look at the feet themselves, which the claw paint on both is kind of different, because the MonsterArts uses more of like a dark kind of brown dry brushing versus the HIYA, where it uses a very deep gray and almost blends in with the body, although the dry brushing is there to kind of save the day. But I will say I prefer the execution on the MonsterArts just because of the claw to the foot difference. So you can actually tell that there's some paint variety and not just one singular color. But if it had the dry brushing of the MonsterArts, then I would say that would be the dry brushing of the HIYA, then I'd say that would be the ultimate winner right there. And lastly, we're going to be taking a look at the tail, which, really thinking about it, MonsterArts has the best application for the tail as far as like just coloring the spines and it actually kind of like glitters onto the base of the spines to give it like a glowing effect, and it certainly is much more reflective than that of the HIYAs. But the HIYAs actually gives off more of a powerful glow effect because of the dry brushing that's on the sides of the tail and the overhead of the tail being like completely dry brushed from the where it meets the sides all the way to the tips of the spines. Yeah, it is true. MonsterArts does kind of feature some more kind of dry brushing. It's very, very mild, but it's so like unnoticeable on the bottom. And same thing can be said about the HIYA, except the HIYA has much better detailing on the bottom of the tail. So as far as Sculpt and Paint goes, I gotta give this to HIYA. Granted, yeah, the MonsterArts has much more defined details, but that's, and in my opinion, the better colored dorsal spines. I just realized I have glitter on my hands. But it's not enough to warrant the point. And that also being said, the HIYA just has the better movie accuracy, especially because that's like what a lot of people go for nowadays. A lot of people will prefer their movie accuracy over stylization because both of them are from the model CG, but this one is defined and stylized a bit by Yuji Sakai. This one was brought straight from the movie into figure form. And for that, and also the amount of detail, dry brushing, painting, movie accuracy, I gotta give it to the HIYA for this round. Next, we're going to take a look at articulation for round 2. And it's a lot more even than one would think. Both of them have ball joints here at the base of the head that allows for a fair degree of movement on both figures. More on the MonsterArts, but that's only because of joint of the placement of the ball joint, because this overlaps the segment and this underlaps the segment. However, both figures feature articulated jaws one's on a hinge, one's on a ball joint, but both of them feature articulated tongues, which, as you can tell, they're really evenly matched in that category, although there is slightly more range on the MonsterArts. And next, we're going to talk about the necks, which this is the entirety of the neck articulation on the HIYA. It's pretty good. It slides around pretty nice, gives you a lot of great range, and just as I mentioned, the gills actually work in unison to create a much more natural looking effect, while the MonsterArts loses that effect thanks to the fact that the gills are lost in the sculpt. However, as far as the range itself goes, it has a ball joint here, the neck ball joint is down here, and it features, even though it's not really needed because it doesn't do much, there's one more cut down here that allows for some slightly additional movement. So you can kind of get a little bit more range out of it. And you can actually look straight up, while the HIYA's Godzilla can only look this far up on its own accord. So don't worry, we'll get to the alternate head. As far as the shoulders are concerned, both of them have a singular ball joint at the shoulders, and HIYA has one hinge at the elbow and a swivel hinge at the hand, while the MonsterArts features double joints at the elbows and a Hot Toy style, almost Reveltech peg, except it doesn't ratchet kind of peg that kind of goes like in one direction, and then you can kind of spin it and then it can kind of go another direction. So I gotta say MonsterArts kind of wins by a little bit in terms of range.